Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural, with our legal experts, Edward Pichardo, Esquire, and Royce Russell, Esquire, and myself, Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant. You'll see me shortly, but let's go ahead and let our co-host greet us today. Mr. Russell, how are you?
I'm doing well, and welcome to the Legally Speaking family. I hope all is well. I hope we still understand that COVID is still around and still live and well out there. So let's make sure that we're taking care of our precautions. It is critical that we keep ahead of this pandemic or disease, because when it first occurred, we were saying to ourselves, well, I'm not going to listen to this one person to tell me to put on a mask and don't do this and don't do that. Now we ready to listen to that same person say you don't have to wear a mask and you can do this and you can do that. So let yourself be your own guide. That's just my medical cautionary tale for today. I hope all is doing well. We having a break in the weather. Weather's starting to become nice. You guys usually say something about April and it's springing and all that other good stuff. So let's hope that all that good
April
stuff happens.
showers bring May flowers.
Yeah, well, let's hope we don't get the
Exactly.
showers. Let's just hope we get the flowers and give those who deserve their flowers while they are alive. So, with that being said, I pass it over to my colleague Ed Pichardo and give him his flowers.
Thank you for the roses, my friend. How are you?
Long time, every day.
Hello, everyone. Hola, buena tarde, mi gente. ¿Cómo están hoy? Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I believe you're going to find this show, as usual, quite educational and fulfilling, as well as enlightening.
Absolutely.
I want to let everybody know that's not a cue card that he has. He just does that from memory, and he just doesn't do it for you folks. When he's walking down the street and how you doing, Ed? He said, I just want you folks to know that when you talk to me, it's going to be educational and for. That's his thing, you know what I mean? So don't let anybody, when the judge come in, he says, good morning, Judge. I just want to let you know, Judge, that the information I'm going to give you is going to be informational, and he gives it all. And I must say, he's true to his tagline, because what he spits, as they say on the microphone, is informational. So, like, once again, here, now you got some tulips, man. So you got some roses, you got some tulips. I'll give you some daisies by the end of the show. I'll give you all your flowers, brother.
I don't know about the daisies.
Oh my goodness. And hey there, Jason. Buenas tardes to you as well.
Hola,
Thank you for
Jason.
tuning in. So, we're going to get started with the first hot topic for everyone who's been wondering. And my phone is still going off with people saying, what is happening in New York with this subway shooting? Apparently, they have arrested a suspect. So, this whole incident that happened at Sunset Park seems like there's some connecting the dots of a YouTube channel and some other pieces of evidence. First, he was a person of interest, and now he has been apprehended, and the mayor made a statement. What say you about this?
Well, a couple of things. I remember doing the show when they were looking for a young lady in Virginia, and I was a legal commentator, or now analyst, on, I believe it was Arise, and it was True TV, known as Court TV. And I was with another detective, and those you can always, a matter of fact, this is part of a part, this footage is on my website, www.r-squaresq.com. This where he and we were having a debate conversation about the term person of interest. And what does that really mean? And how that is not really code word, but is code word for accuser. Because when you say he's a person of interest, what happens is it puts everybody on alert as to that individual. It makes traveling very difficult. And he's a person of interest for what? And I must say that in looking at how the media went about describing him this time, some anchor people didn't do it well. I think on today's show they called him a suspect, even though sometimes in my brain suspect and person of interest might mean the same thing. I think the New York City Police Department in their press conference, the detectives there, the people that were giving the press conference, and even Mayor Adams were sure to say that this is a person of interest. We don't have all the pieces together. We have some pieces. We have a lot of pieces, but we're not going to call this person the suspect. And throughout my history, and I've been on this earth a long time, far too many times people of color are labeled immediately as the suspect. And we could debate once again whether a person of interest means the same thing as a suspect, but it means volumes to me. Someone that's a critical thinker, looking at who controls the narrative, looking at what was done in Chicago, where there was a mass shooting among people of color, and the media there interviewed a young kid, and the young kid said, I can't wait till I get older so I can get my gun. And the media outlet stopped it right there. Didn't do the other footage, didn't relay the other footage where he said, I can't wait till I get older and get my gun, become a police officer, and stop this violence. They chopped it, and they set the narrative that, once again, people of color are prone to be violent. And so I can appreciate this moment in time where those that were in charge and giving the press conference was very, very particular, and they repeated, said he's a person of interest. These are the dots that we have. He's a person of interest. We'll let you know more when we know more. Now, what they were doing in the back room is what they do in the back room. But here on Speaking Legally, where we take the culture and we take the legal and we mesh it and we try to use our critical thinking hat, that was important to me.
Yeah, and I believe there was also, an additional suspect, another African American male or black man who was also being somehow placed in possibly that same category, is my understanding, but I'm not sure about that one. But nonetheless, it did seem to signify a level of care in not projecting that they had come to an immediate conclusion, but were instead still in the process of an investigation. I think it was either late last night or early today when that term person of interest got elevated to suspect, and we started getting all of the Amber Alerts throughout the New York City region. I know I got about 3 or 4 of them within a span of probably an hour earlier today. And then, I finally saw on the news about, I guess maybe an hour ago, that they had actually captured the gentleman.
Now, what is interesting to this whole puzzle, as I hear you speak, is, and once again, we tie the legal and the culture. So we're going to talk about this incident, and we're going to talk about the culture, right? Did it fall out this way because we had a person of color that's a mayor, right? Now, I'm thinking, knowing Eric, it probably did. And a person who's a police officer. I think that experience, that combination, that sensitivity, that ability to know, for every action there's a reaction. Let's place our words carefully. I don't know much about the commissioner of the New York City Police Department, so I can't speak of her, who's a woman of color, African-American female. I can't, but I know Eric. And so I think, once again, when we talk about taking advantage of being in certain positions and what we bring to positions, leadership, sensitivity, culture, I think this might be one of those times, and I want to give him credit, even if it wasn't, because far too many times I've seen it roll out differently. And I'm even talking about where people of color are victims of police brutality and excessive force, where they die and where we die. And what you see is that, the person stole a bag of chips when he was 15 years old. Like, what does that have to do with him being shot or brutalized in the street? And the faces haven't changed that much in front of the camera, right? And I know the power structures behind those faces haven't changed that much. But the people that are being interviewed have taken hold of the narrative, which I believe is powerful in setting the table.
And that, you know, and you're talking about an interesting side of things, is I know there have been a number of people who have been concerned or otherwise critical about the law enforcement focus that the mayor has been projecting, you know, recently, you know, in response to what's going on and people's concerns with that. But it's refreshing at the same time to be able to see certain dynamics taking place, in that even though you have a law enforcement focus, pro law enforcement, the hope that you have is that whatever the application of it is going to be, that it will be even handed and not being done in a racist manner, right?
Right.
In many cases, I know for my own son, very early on, I told him that it was necessary for him at all times, once he reached a certain age, to always have ID on him or identification on him, because of my own experiences and experiences that I had as a public defender. I remember having this young man being arrested every couple of months because he had the same name as an individual who had several warrants. And so every time, you know, he would get arrested and be released a day or two later, it was basically because he didn't have any ID on him. And, you know, I had to really get on him, you know, once, like, listen, man, aren't you getting, you know, I mean, this is just the world that we're living in. You don't have to do that, but you should for your own edification and safety, and desire not to continuously be, you know, picked up and arrested, you know, for when you give them your name, they immediately, because they would just stop this young man, because of course he would be in certain places and the cops would stop him. Oh, what's your name? You don't have okay, your name is coming up. Come on, we're taking you, you know? And so, you know, it speaks to an interesting aspect of this. What I would also say about this incident, of course, too, is that people need to also start looking at some of the background of what occurred. Some people are talking about how there was no law enforcement actually on the platform at the time of this incident, and how a lot of times law enforcement will gather around the turnstile area versus the actual platform, if it's different, of course, from the mezzanine, and that being kind of due to that possibly when the NYPD merged the transit police with the regular NYPD and the loss of resources there. You also have the CCTV TV cameras not working in the station. That was a particular concern here, that in certain neighborhoods there's an abundance of cameras and in others there aren't. And then, you know, one of the other things that I noticed too that I found kind of strange was that the doors on either side of that subway car were locked, because when he throws this smoke bomb, you know, folks are immediately heading for the doors that they thought that they could leave the car in, because the car was in motion in the tunnel, but they couldn't even get out there. And at first that, you know, I thought, oh, well, maybe this guy was a guy who had a key, or he was a former transit. And what was explained to me by an individual who's quite knowledgeable about how these things work is that particular subway line, the cars, the doors between the cars are actually locked. Because the reality of it is you're not supposed to be walking in between cars. You can get a fine for that. So I'm not sure if the transit authority is now going to start revisiting that policy concerning those doors being locked. Because I can imagine, let's say if it wasn't him, let's say there was a fire and it was inside of the tunnel, and these individuals these people inside are trying to get out. You know, I mean, I'm just not sure, but you know, this is all.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things where situations create progress, right? So the reason why they had the doors locked was so many people were walking in between the cars, and then what happened? An accident would happen, and then they would be sued. People were urinating in between the cars. Kids were running in between the cars. People were hopping the train by going through in between the cars when the train door closed, Remember those days? I don't want to date myself, but remember those days where cats would just jump right there where that chain is and open up and slide in, and because they missed that train. So I think the MTA,
and unfortunately, I was one of those in high school.
Well, there you go.
When the train would be so crowded that you couldn't
Right.
get in, and I was going to be late, I would
jump over. Right.
Yeah.
So
Oh my
a history of that led to MTA, and this is me, my personal feeling, just living in life and seeing these things, led to the advancement of that. We're gonna lock these doors so that doesn't happen, right? But what you said is correct. So now we're looking at the other side of it. Now we live in a different world, right? And this world that we live in now, kids are no longer jumping in between it. They're not doing the crazy, dangerous things that we did in reference to riding on the back of the train or the bus like we did. Or let me just say, like some of us did, right? You didn't do that. Some of us did, but they're into other dangerous activities. So I'll take a ride on the back of a bus and jumping in between now than the way they busting off shots on a regular basis. I'll come back to that. I'll stick a pin in that right now. But these are the liabilities. These are the liabilities that come up. And we know that, you know, the feed and the cameras and things of that nature, depending upon what train station you're at, they just sometimes don't work. And the old saying, and I hate to be critical, but you know, police congregate among themselves all the time. And you just want to walk up and just say, spread yourself out, man. You know, agitate the crowd. You know what I mean? You know, you got a cell phone, call one another. Just don't stand here. So we see all those things as issues. I'm sure there's going to be some type of lawsuit coming out somewhere, somehow, in regards to some negligence one way or the other. But once again, we have to look at this in totality. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. How did we get to the place that we got to today? What does it all mean? And from a cultural standpoint, I can tell you, if you think the mayor was moving in a direction to ensure that guns are off the street, rightfully, this just is 2.0, 2.5, 2.6. And what that means, and this is where the culture comes in, what that means, just like with 9/11, Black folks were used to being searched when they got to the airport, right? It wasn't no big thing. We're used to that. That happens, right? We didn't have a problem giving up that liberty to be on a safe plane. There were some people that had major problems with that. What? I got to get checked. I got to get this. Now I got to remove all that. Not really understanding giving up that right gives you the right to live life. Now, I'm not condoning this. I'm not an advocate of this. I think, Ed, you said it rightfully, and I've said it before on other shows. It's all about implementation, that these units to get guns off the street are now going to become more aggressive.
Now I do want to mention something because my brother Gianbavo a little earlier, I saw he flashed a comment. My understanding is that whenever there's an emergency, the conductors and motorman, because the motorman is the one who otherwise heads the train or drives it, the conductor is the one who opens and closes the doors. They're supposed to react to the emergency, and they also are supposed to have the ability, I believe, to unlock these doors. I'm not sure if that's the case on these particular trains. I just wanted to provide that comment, and whatever the reality is on that, but that was the understanding that I was given in terms of the doors.
But look at
and I'm sorry, just to respond to one thing, the mayor during his press conference last night, remotely, by the way, because he has COVID, he called it a culture of death. That's what he called it. He called it a culture of death. So it looks like he's definitely gonna do the similar things to what former Mayor Bloomberg did in terms of really trying to use his platform as the mayor of one of the largest cities on the planet to nationally push through some sort of gun reform here. Because,
what else do we need to see happen? And, while this story is live flashing as we're talking about it, there were additional shootings. They were talking about 23 yesterday. So outside of that incident, then we had another incident, and the numbers keep going up and up and up. We have to do something. And if you are watching the trends across the country, there are middle schools that are confiscating close to 100 guns, because people are talking about these young people don't feel safe in certain communities. There's layers to this problem. And, as Mr. Russell said, when certain things happen, it pushes forth agendas a little bit broader and louder. I really want to see where we land with the protection, not just here in New York, but across the country, because the gun violence has spiked.
Can you close the caption of this? Because now we're seeing Eddie Murphy and a whole bunch of other things going on here.
It's distracted you.
Yeah, Gilbert Godfrey.
Gilbert Godfrey.
Love all of that. It ain't about
rest in peace. He was funny.
Since it's about us, we're gonna keep it about us.
Oh,
but to your point, once again, I said this jokingly in public, but I do really mean it. When people of color start taking advantage of the laws legally to purchase guns, then that's when the gun laws will change. I know that in my heart. When folks start, yeah, all right, Second Amendment, I'm down with that. Let's go. Let's go. We are not that type of people. We have other things that we think about. But if we were to turn the tide and really effectuate and take hold of the Second Amendment, you will see gun laws change, because it's all right to kill yourselves in your little community. Clearly, it must be all right, because gun laws haven't changed that much. But a guy like Ed, a woman like you, somebody else who running the train platform in another state starts to take matters into their own hands, at least perception-wise, then I believe the gun laws would change. And one other thing about the train cars open and the train cars closed, from a human perspective, I don't think when you talk about training for conductors, I don't know how much training they're receiving on that, at least in the past versus presently and in the future. But I would imagine, and this may sound somewhat counterintuitive, but it makes sense, that if a tragedy is happening in one car, do you let the tragedy happen 5 other cars? Is there some sense of like, we're going to contain and isolate, just like police do? If you got a gun, we're going to contain and isolate you in this area. Something happens, are they containing and isolating? Like, no, we are not going to open up these other doors, because then this person can run through the trains and create more havoc. I don't know what their training is. I'm just saying that there's a prosecution, there's a defense, there's a heads, there's a tails, there's a yin, there's a yang. And be mindful of that.
I mean, as a former in-house counsel to the Transport Workers Union Local 100, and knowing those 38,000 members over there, you got some real, despite what management does, the history has been that you got some real heroes on that train willing to put themselves in peril to assist and or save these passengers. In fact, at the beginning of COVID, there was one particular brother who, when a homeless person, I believe it was a homeless person, set a cart on fire inside of the train, he helped rescue and remove from the train all of the passengers, all the way to the point where he himself ended up dying from smoke inhalation and a heart attack right after that, and leaving behind 2 babies. And
I commend those
those folks, no matter what the particular training is, when they see their passengers in danger, they seem to immediately react to, because those are working class people, so they identify with those folks on that train trying to get to where they need to go, man.
No, but the statement I'm making is not.
I know the statement you're making in terms of confining the danger to the because car. I understand that.
The other side of being passionate and want to protect is thinking that, all right, I got 20 other thousand people I need to protect too. And one is not less than the other. It's just an issue of looking at it. A long time ago, not even a long time ago, but some time ago, I was doing severance employment packages for attorneys when they would get fired. And I ever asked, I would ask them why you got terminated. And the company would say, well, they weren't bringing in any business, so they got to go. Right. And I'm like, well, when the company was sued for 20 million and you settled it for 3 million, 20 take away 3 is 17. You brought in 17 million. You hear what I'm saying? That was a cost savings. You have to change the thinking. So I say the same thing here. Yes, it is probably just heroic going in, just heroic and saying we're going to confine, because it's the totality of circumstances that we look at.
You would hope. You would hope.
You would hope. You would hope. And then you got some folks. That are just like, yo, I'm out. That's it, right? And that's that. But as much as we talk about unlawful stops, and much as we talk about culture and law, you need to know that there's going to be an uptick on ensuring safety across the board, which is unfortunate, because I was hoping that this mayor would be able to focus on some other broader things, right? And if the emergency is here, then he has to put his finger in that hole to stop that from leaking. And someone had said the other day, we was up at the Black Caucus, right? Black and Latino Caucus. All the legislators meet there and people hobnob and try to create connections. And somebody said up there, well, it seems like the only thing the mayor is concerned about is education and policing. There's so much more. I think those two areas are extremely important. I get what the person is saying, but when this is happening and things are surrounding these two issues, you can't ignore it to make sure that, everybody's getting free cable somewhere or whatever, whatever other important thing might be going on.
And listen, quite frankly, the safety in the subway is tied to the economic vitality of this city.
Yes.
The reason for the proliferation of subways historically throughout New York City is because that helped move people. That helped relieve the traffic above ground. Okay. That was the case in New York City. That was the case in, say, London as well, because I saw a documentary
Boston,
on
you
that.
name it, everywhere.
All over. It moves people. You can't have that many people above ground moving around in an efficient and timely manner. You see it now with the proliferation of the Uber and the Lyft and all these other, companies providing transportation. You're sitting in traffic. Why? Because there's too many cars. So people got to ride that subway, and that subway
it's a must.
To be safe. It has to be efficient. It has to be clean, and it gets workers to their jobs. It makes money.
The other day, a client said we were done at court, and they were like, "Oh, well, we're downtown. You want me to drive you uptown?" I was like, "No way, Jose. I'm jumping on this train. I'll be there in 10 minutes, and we just getting out of the parking lot. By the time you wait, I would have walked there. By the time you got your car and hit Broadway, I would probably be somewhere like 14th Street, and next stop, I'm off that train." There's
Money Man, Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Remember, he used to regularly ride the subway, although a few stops between York Avenue and
yeah, I mean, like, come on, my man, like, you know what I'm saying?
But he knew the value of it though as a businessman. Like, right. He knew this thing has to work.
Well, so we can stay on this for a while, because it is. I mean, this is the reality. We live in New York City. It's one of the largest cities in the world. We get around on the train, and I know there's a financial concern that people will stop wanting to ride the train because they don't feel it's safe. And so there's been a lot of commentary about that as well, that there's still police presence, it's safe. All I can say is I'm praying for those who were injured. Some are still in the hospital, recovering. They were on their way to school, work, wherever. They did not intend to end up, fighting for their life on an average commute into the city. So we're praying for all the families that are affected. I know that all of us in New York, everyone was calling to see what's going on. Are you guys okay? What's happening? Thank you for everyone who was sharing love. And if this gentleman is indeed guilty, we know that will come out. And if there is somebody else, we just want justice and the truth to come out, whatever that truth is, and that we can really, hopefully, the gentle reminder that you all gave that the police don't need to congregate in one area, maybe move around. Who knows? Maybe John said we need more police and more cameras. It's a lot, but unfortunately, all change doesn't happen quickly. So
So let me
let's
put a
hope it will.
cultural bow on to when I said agitate the crowd. So
Okay.
like this is speaking legally. So this is what we do. If you don't like it, switch the station, right? So go on Instagram, go some other place. But here's the cultural tie to it, and there's folks out there that will know this, right? I'm a big fan of Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. You can say whatever you want, whatever issues plague them. And during this era of what people have labeled as Black exploitation films, these two guys, they did a lot of films together. And a little bit about me. The reason why I cling to these two guys, because it reminds me of my best friend and myself and this guy named Ted Singleton. That's we around. That's what it is. And these were older men in their mid 30s, 40s, as far as playing in these movies and the characters that they held. I'll be brief, but I'll be long, right? And so, but they were still friends, and they were always friends. And if something happened to one, he's like, "Hey man, I'm with you. We're gonna work it out together." And they were married, and their wives, and the wives knew one another, and they stayed connected. So there was one scene that they went to Madame Sanovia's, and there was a room downstairs, and they were gambling. And Bill Cosby, he's putting down his money. He's raking up money. And Sidney Poitier is a conservative guy, like looking over his shoulder. And so the bodyguard comes to next to him. He said, "You playing or what?" And Sidney Poitier goes in his wallet, and he holding the wallet so tight, and he got like a couple of dollars because they're laborers, right? He got a couple of dollars. Bill Cosby, he's making all this money. He got my man looking. He said, yeah, I'm playing. He took out some money. He said, "All right, well then put your money down, or else agitate the crowd." And so when I say that the police need to agitate the crowd, agitate the crowd, get to moving.
Oh my goodness gracious.
So there you go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Russell. On to the next story for the day. That was your comic relief, everyone. But unfortunately,
well, I mean, it's reality. Don't stand
it
there.
it is reality. So this is not funny. This is unfortunately a challenge of what we see here on. Let me just stop the news because it's going to keep going. But our New York Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin resigns following arrest in campaign finance fraud case. What is happening here?
Yeah.
Well, this is you want to go, Royce?
No, I'm just saying that it reads Lieutenant Governor resign. I don't know if he had much choice, right? I mean, Hochul hitched her wagon to him, saying that he's her running partner. She's trying to become the next governor. Clearly, if he's indicted for something got to go. And I'll just stop there, let you go on, Ed, and then I'll come back to that. So I just, I'm very, very, very critical when it comes to titles of stories and what needs to happen. Yeah, he resigned. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I just want to just give a little background for those who aren't aware. I mean, this started out with the arrest of an individual named Gerald Migdal, who has an organization. Him and his family have an organization called the Migdal Organization. And basically they do kind of real estate development. They own several properties in Harlem. But with respect to
and that person Migdal is not a person of color, right?
No. He's a gentleman who appears to be white, of European descent. The organization also has a nonprofit called the Friends of Public School Harlem. And that's where things, start kind of becoming interwoven here. Apparently, when Brian was running for New York City Comptroller, he didn't win, as it's apparent. But when he was running for New York City Comptroller, Migdal claims that he was approached by Brian needing help with campaign fundraising for that campaign, and asked him to try to get as many small donations as he could to him so that he could use those small donations to eventually qualify for matching funds by the city's program. You know, if you run for office in the city has a program where if I believe you get you get these small donations of $250 is the maximum, is my understanding, for those small donations. The city agrees to match funds. It's basically a program to help out candidates who aren't as well resourced as others, right? And so that's where things start going wrong, because apparently Gerald Migdal claims that he told him, well, I'm not really good at this stuff. Cuts a couple of checks that he makes it seem like it's from others other than himself and his family. Eventually, investigators ask some of these individuals who supposedly wrote checks, did you actually write this check? Did you actually make a contribution to this campaign? And they said no.
Well, let me say, let me just chime in. Like, the investigation just didn't sprout out of the grounds, right? Migdal is indicted.
Yeah, Migdal was indicted,
right?
but there had been some concerns before that, because for those of you who may or may not understand, when it comes to these campaign contributions, this stuff to a certain degree is very well tracked. You know, who made the contribution? If it's a entity, they want to know if, you know, who owns that entity. Has that entity received any other favors or otherwise benefits from the state, you know, to make sure that there isn't a link between the contribution and some sort of other quid pro quo benefit. So what happens here is that he claims that Brian agreed once the contributions were made, he took steps to get a $50,000 grant to this nonprofit organization. And Migdal is claiming that at the time when he originally spoke to him about the contributions, he said, well, the only individuals I could approach are people who would otherwise contribute to my nonprofit. So Brian gets him they mention Senate Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins saying, hey, listen, we have these discretionary funds for any of you senators that have a particular organization you want to give a grant to in your district towards education and some other community needs. Brian puts in for this organization, is actually able to get, I believe, a proclamation on Senate floor for the $50,000 grant to the organization. But at the time that Brian agrees to become the lieutenant governor, there are certain disclosure forms that he has to fill out truthfully regarding whether there's any link between contributors and grants, whether there are any investigations going on that you're aware of, subpoenas, etc. He doesn't answer apparently those questions truthfully regarding subpoenas concerning, you know, these campaign contributions, because as I said, this investigation was taking place, you know, well before this arrest, and resulted in the arrest of Migdal. And now, Migdal has apparently become a cooperating witness. The question is going to be...
Can I interject just for 1 second? Can I interject just 1 second? A couple of things. One, so the audience completely understand, there's a difference between state investigation by New York City detectives and a federal investigation. Mm-hmm. Federal investigation, no one is arrested until all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed to make that arrest. Now, you still have the right to defend against yourself, against the charges. Mm-hmm. That is always your right. And I'm not saying he's guilty by the mere fact that he's arrested. But on the federal level, they take their time. They're in no rush to make an arrest, because when they make an arrest, they want to do a press conference and they want to do a lot of things. And so they'll just slowly go through the paper trail, slowly develop what they need to develop. And I'll make the analogy to cases that I've worked on. You have an accountant that is an accountant and prepares taxes for a lot of people. And for each person that comes in, unbeknownst to the next person, everybody's getting a refund. Some getting large refunds, some getting not so large, but everybody's getting a refund. The IRS starts to say, well, wait a minute. How good an accountant is Ed Pichardo that everybody that comes to him is getting a refund? Then what the IRS does is look at all the taxes that Ed prepares. I'm giving this analogy because this is exactly the type of work they do in a case like this. So now they look and they say, well, wait a minute. Every client that goes to Ed, they all got a $500 credit for wearing uniforms. Even the lady who works in Macy's, what uniform was she wearing? She got to wear a tag that says Macy's on it. That's it. You're not getting a $500 credit on that. So then what the U.S. attorneys and the agents do, IRS in this analogy, they'll start to go to those people and say, you received a refund for $10. We believe that that refund was given to you inappropriately because you put some things on your taxes that may not be true, such as the credit for the $500 for wearing a uniform when you don't wear a uniform. Now, who helped you prepare the taxes? Oh, Ed did. Okay, they were already looking for Ed. So they start to go to all those people that had their taxes done and start to squeeze all those people. And all those people don't want to be arrested. So they start to give Ed up. And then that's how the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Now, what they could do is go to Ed and say, Ed, we think you did some funny business here. And they can go arrest all the clients that Ed serviced because they all got the credit. It could go like this. Ed says, hey, I just do the taxes. They come to me and say they got a $500 credit. I write it down. I don't go through to see if it's actually true or not. They tell me, I write it down. So you got to go arrest those. So the feds and the agents control which way this goes. And so they went after Migdal. They followed his trail. Now he got caught up. I'm assuming my legal experience brings me to the forefront that I'm very comfortable in saying that he probably, allegedly, gave up some information that leads them to Brian. Plus the fact that the paper trail is a paper trail. This is what we call them the stubborn evidence type of case. The paper ain't going to change. It's going to stay the same. If you check no, it's going to always say no. It ain't never going to change to a yes. If you put down $50,000 and it was $5,000, it ain't going to never change. It's going to say $50,000. And that is a very hard case to fight.
And just to make clear, this was apparently started by inquiries by the New York State Board of Elections. So you can have this state agency gather all this information, all this evidence, and then turn it over to the feds.
Right. And so they make
say, hey, this is what we have.
I'm sorry, I had to laugh. This is a real live show. Richard Rivera said, whoa, that IRS analogy is deep. Yeah, it is tax time.
Yeah, that's my friend Richie. How you doing, Richie?
It's coming around. It's coming around Friday. It's coming around Friday. You got to send you in on Monday. You might want to rethink your position. Think about it. Think about it. I'm not saying, Rich, you gotta.
Well. This is important because folks got to understand that when you sign a paper as to the truthfulness and accuracy of the information stated on that form, you're locking yourself in.
Not only that, here's one better than I remember. I had to leave an accountant. I had to leave his services because I noticed that although he was doing the work, when we filed it, it would say self-prepared. I'm like, yo, B, wait a minute. Like, yo, homeboy, which one? Because I'm giving you the money to do this. How come it's reading self-prepared? Because if the boomerang's coming back, Jack, you better believe it ain't coming back to this location. So, but I say all this in jest, but the truth of the matter is that it's a paper trail case. And, this happened before he became lieutenant governor, but he wrote down certain answers on a document and you can't perjure yourself on these documents. And now you find yourself here. And it's a situation, to say the least.
No,
Yeah,
no,
that's
it's unfortunate, and you know, when you look at some of the amounts here, it's not like, you know,
It's
huge.
not a lot. It's negligible. Like just you got to do the work sometimes. And here's the cultural piece. Not that we're prone not to do the work, but guess what? Do the work. We got to do the work. And sometimes that means taking an L. I've been there. I know what it's like to be on the verge to run for office, and you look at it and you're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. There's not going to be an easy way to the finish line. I need to train some more. All right, I'm gonna step back and I'm gonna get some more training, and then I'm gonna go ahead. You got to do the work because it's gonna come back at you.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. The nonprofit, that, you know, same thing. It you know, it seems, you know, when you look at the website, it looks like they're doing good work. Not sure what's gonna happen here. Recognize a few folks on the board, but
They're not touching those folks. They need those folks to come in to say what they need to say.
yeah,
It's what we call on the federal level a proffer agreement. They come and they proffer information. They give information. They get some type of immunity as long as they don't lie. These cases, the type of cases that rarely go to trial because the paper speaks volumes. There are some folks that do take these cases to trial, and sometimes they're successful. You know, don't be afraid to, you know, to fight for your rights. You know, don't be afraid to pick up the phone, call me, call Ed. We'll stand right there. But remember, sometimes paper don't lie. And, you know, you got to love it when the U.S. Attorney's Office do things like this. I'm going to read from the complaint a little bit. You guys can't see this, but the complaint, when they think they got a real tight case, and like I said, these are all allegations, right? They'll start to put within the complaint, the federal charges, the actual acts, what they call overt acts, the things that you did. Like Royce is charged with kidnap. Okay, on Monday at 3:30, he went to Home Depot and he bought tape, him and Ed, and then they'll have the receipt of the tape. You understand what I mean? And then by the time you finish the complaint, you're like, well, goddamn, like, you know, you got all the overt acts there. What are we talking about? So in here, Benjamin uses his official authority to allocate state funds to organization. Before whatever date, he requested discretionary funds, and then he does the following. He was requesting state funds to do A, B, C, D. I'm not going to give it to you because I want you to read it on your own. That's different than a boilerplate indictment saying that they robbed the store. Next paragraph. They kidnapped. Right. Next paragraph. When you start getting into those details, that to me, in a very weird intellectual way from a U.S. attorney perspective, that's showing off.
Well, you know what? This is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say this. I want to wait and see what happens here, because some of this stuff, you know, with respect to Migdal coming to Brian and saying, here are the contributions. He's the one that gathered those contributions. I mean, right. And I liken this to the case. I believe John Liu had a situation like this, you know, years ago as the comptroller. He had a campaign contributor come to him with a bundle, and, you know, and it eventually was, I believe, returned or whatever. But you sometimes have these businessmen come to elected officials or individuals running for campaigns saying, I was able to gather all these contributions, say from all of my friends or whatever, and, you know, and represent that.
Here's the burden. You got to do your due diligence to show that you do. It's like us, like attorneys. Defendant come in, you represent them. Well, I can say that I was at my mother's house. Yeah, you can say that, but you ain't going to say that with me representing you, because that's a lie. You're going to get caught. And then when you get caught, you're going to say the dumb stuff like this. Oh, my attorney told me I can say it. Right? Mm-hmm. So just like with the accountant, the people that he serviced, they're going to turn around and say, well, my accountant said it was all right. He signed off on it. He's the professional. He's the one that has the license, he or she. He or she is the one that knows the code of ethics and responsibilities. Me as the person that's saying, hey, man, put the $500 credit down, you're supposed to stop me and say, no, we can't do that. I come with the bag. I give it to you. I say, here go the contributions. somebody on your campaign, and once again, I'm not saying the brother is guilty. I want you to hear me loud and clear. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just setting this out for a broader audience to kind of understand in context what you need to do and what your responsibilities are. And so if Richard Rivera can take away anything from what I said here, and now he can use it to his own experience, that's a good thing, because we want that, because that's what we're here. We're here to educate. We're not here to castrate or put labels or do anything of that nature. We're here to educate. This example brings us to a level of education, because Brian is my man. I would stand for him and fight next to him. But I am saying that in your analogy, Ed, that yeah, that happens, but the person who's going to be hanging the hook got to make sure the fish is secured.
No, and I get that. I'm just saying that I want to see what comes out in the next couple of weeks to a month. Because another thing that I found interesting in the press release by the Southern District of New York is they mentioned in Organization 1 that Brian had previously requested grants for that was under that same organization, but it's not, but none of the media has named that organization. So I'd be interested in seeing if that comes out in the next couple of days and whether it was similar. Apparently it was under the same level of control by the Migdal organization as the Friends of Public School Harlem. So, I'm going to be monitoring this.
Well, but also understand the government and the feds don't do anything without there being a reason, right?
No.
All I'm saying is that organization could be an organization that is doing positive things in a positive way, and they don't want to destroy that organization. And they know that you probably, if you were to defend it, you don't want to destroy that organization, right? And so they just leave it there, and they put you against yourself to say, what am I going to do? Because I really don't want this organization to be exposed. And the way it gets exposed is if I keep on pushing this up the hill. I mean, it's plenty of ways of how the government squeezes you as a practicing attorney on that level, seeing it coming. All right, this is going to be the next question. I can tell you this. And people always say, oh, yeah, no, I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to say that. All right. Okay. I wasn't there. You were there. You're going to say, okay. And when the box start coming and that room start getting a little closed.
Yeah. And then it's another situation. Well, we also had one more thing to touch on today that we probably will just highlight and go into next week, because this situation with our lieutenant governor, it's a lot of additional layers to it, what this means. So we hope that he is able to have the defense that's required that can prove his innocence. And as you said, usually when it gets to the feds,
and or mitigate the penalties.
And let's add one other thing, since we only going to share that. We got 7 minutes, right? We may even have to save that. Here's the real. I want to say here's the real deal, but here's my critical thinking cultural hat goes on again. Look what's good happening in the world right now. Really look at the timing of all this. Look how Cuomo is on the air talking about no charges. Nobody indicted me. I'm innocent. He's a very powerful person. I'm not saying he's behind this. I'm just saying, look at all the factors that are in the air, right? There's like almost tea leaves on the wall saying that if he ever going to run for president, he got to recapture the governorship in New York, so that doesn't haunt him when he goes nationwide if he runs for president. These are all my thoughts, right? I haven't read it. This is what I think, so nobody can come after me for thinking, because I can think and I'm expressing my thoughts, right? So he got to come back and recapture the governorship before he even thinks about running for president, if that's what he's thinking about. All right, powerful man, got things in place. I'll just leave it there. Took a hit, affected his family, got to make it right there, right? His brother, Chris, got to make it right there. Got this governor who took over for me, who's running, who names the guy next to him, next to her. This is my running mate, Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin. Now, the indictment didn't happen before she opened her mouth. It didn't happen 3 weeks before. It didn't happen an hour before. It didn't happen a minute before. She lays it down. Not even a second. Like nobody was like, yo, hold on. You can make that announcement. Joe, check it out. We knew it was happening. We talked about it. We didn't even do it on the last show. We knew it was happening. We were like, oh man, we should have got it out there first. She names him. Then the indictment hits. Now she has to fall back. So now when you look at her running, right, and whoever she fall back to have as her running mate, now you look at her, she's now a little bit is taken from the legs now, because what? You didn't know what was going on with Cuomo because you were locked up in the room, so you don't know what's happening. So you separate yourself. Oh, you don't know what's going on with Brian Benjamin, so you lock yourself in a room. Then it becomes down like, what do you know? Like when trouble's in the air, you don't know anything. You better believe that Billy Club is coming out. This ain't all happened by happenstance. Let me tell you, whether it's Swazi or anybody else who's running, whether Cuomo decides at the midnight hour, boom, I'm putting my name in it. This just didn't happen all on itself. You got to
Well, you're speaking to a particular problem that we didn't discuss, which is how does he get off the ballot? Because I think he would have to die or move to another state.
Well,
otherwise, he's on the ballot, is my understanding.
Well, look, there's more complexity now.
Because you know that lieutenant governor seat is an open seat. It's not. You could have possibly a lieutenant governor that's antagonistic to the governor.
Without a question.
Which remember, it almost happened the last election when Jumaane Williams was running and almost got the lieutenant governor.
That's right. And you know that would have been hell and hot water between those two.
So that's where, the concern is amongst a lot of folks is how's this going to go down? Because I would imagine he can't move to New Jersey now that he's out on $250,000 bail.
Oh, no, he could. No. I mean, look, the requirement is that he stays in the Southern District and all this other stuff. But as powers may be, believe me, that would be a small string to pull.
Well, not that he can't move. I'm
relocating my family,
living in other states.
And check it out, Ed.
Have cases in the Southern District, but
check it out. Let me tell you something. You bring up a great point. There's probably people out there right now while we sleeping, they're thinking on how we gonna move this cat to where he get moved, so she don't have to hit those hurdles. She don't have to hit those hurdles that you're talking about, because he got to go, right? First, he got to resign. Secondly, what you're saying is part of that maybe is relocation to another state. All right, then he's off the ballot. Boom. Now I'm free to do what I want to do. I mean, that's some critical thinking right there.
Oh boy, this is a tangled web.
I think people are thinking they're pondering and planning.
That's right. I like that, pondering and planning.
Oh wow, it's giving me a headache.
Let's add another P on that: plotting, pondering, and planning. How about that?
Well,
the 3 P's.
Yeah, the 3 P's.
This is. It hurts my heart to see these kind of things bubble up in the news, but we'll see how it plays out. Our other issue is a heavy one. We'll probably hold off on sharing that. But spark from the murder of George Floyd. Interesting what some people want to make law, why it's important to get engaged, have office, hold office, have that position, because you never know what will come up and be presented for legislation. So this is where the legal meets the cultural. We're going to keep you updated, but we'll be back next week with more information. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Not really. I mean, I hope you're able to get your taxes done on time successfully and, stay aware and stay vigilant.
What I can say is take care, be well, and be safe. See you on the next go around.
All right, family. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.